Hello there, and welcome to a new Eldritch build for Age of Wonders 4. This time I went and tinkered something for the Primal Culture. So this was a little bit harder to wrap my head around than the other builds were. There weren't as straightforward options, but as you might already see, I went for some icy fun, and where I ended up is very crowd control heavy, very robust, and has a lot of different options up your sleeve, and it's very hard to kill. I like it. I really like it. So let's start with racial traits and the like. So I went for keen-sighted, as for most Eldritch builds, a lot of the power comes from the backline, and missing the enemy is unacceptable. Therefore, arcane focus was also very important, since I'm relying a lot on battle mages and supporters to dish out damage. Adaptable, just to make our units grow faster. I went for the Glacial Mammoth path for this one, as obviously ice is very easy to synergize with the Cryomancy Tome, what we're doing. And there's also the Primal Mammoth, allowing us to shove people away, very useful, and freeze people. Also, once our units have attacked often enough, they gain the Glacial Mammoth's Boon, which allows them to deal more frost damage and inflict frozen for a couple of attacks. So altogether, we have a lot of freezing capabilities and displacement capabilities, which I really liked for this build, as it fits very nicely into the crowd control heavy playstyle of the Eldritch. Mana channelers is what I personally found mandatory for this build, as we are relying on a lot of summons, or at least we can if we want to. But the battlefield summons that this build loves are also influenced by this, so it's a very powerful little thing. Druidic Terraformers, well, I went for it as it synergizes really well with this build, but you don't need to pick it up. There are several other options you could go for, ranging from runesmiths to some other shadow trait like powerful evokers, or even the new one with the whispering stones. There's plenty of options. But Druidic Terraformers plays nicely into this build because we have plenty of access to elemental units, and it makes terraforming cheaper, so it plays really nicely into both parts of our strategy. Tomes. Let's talk tomes. Obviously, we're playing ice, and therefore I'm even starting with Cryomancy. The Tentacle Tome does not add too much of early game power into our build, but the Cryomancy one does. Frost Blades and Frost Arrows should be picked up in the very first turns as quick as you can, as it gives your archers a slowing effect, and your melee guys a extra edge on frozen or slowed units, which acts as an execute or general damage amplification unit all over your army. Very useful. Here comes the Lesser Snow Spirit. This guy is available, cheap, and evolves if you can pull it off into a really nice unit eventually that has basically not so much staying power as your cultural tier 3, but it's mobile, it hits like a truck, and can finally reliably freeze people. So does the White Witch, so she's basically the budget version of this guy, but she's a battle mage, and therefore she has other qualities. As soon as we unlock the Tentacle Tome, she is also able to constrict enemies just with auto attacks, which immobilizes them and lets them suffer from damage over time, and features another reliable ranged freezing attack that comes as a single action attack, which is really amazing. Ice Coffin is quite useful if you ever lack yet another freeze. It does not happen too often, though, but you often unlock it as a starting spell if you start with a tome. And Blizzard. Blizzard is amazing, as the status resistance comes to matter more and more the deeper down you go into the late game. So keep a couple of blizzards ready to fire up on your enemies in the late game to melt down their status resistance so they can't resist your freezes that easily. The School of Cryomancy helps you out a ton by providing easy knowledge and mana for ice and snow provinces, and we're covering the entire world in ice eventually. Tome of the Tentacle comes as a second, offering us plenty of cool things, mainly constricting focus for our supporters, battle mages, giving them the ability to hurt and immobilize with just their basic attacks. But we're not stopping there. The Constrictor is a budget version of your cultural tier 3 spear, very versatile, good damage, pulls enemies, constricts enemies, and we can also summon tentacles. Comes off cheap because of our trait. Place it down wherever somebody is ought to be stopped. Tendril Labyrinth for your cities, for the gold and the city stability. I really, really appreciate that. And slap the Manifest Tentacle on your heroes as well to have an overwhelming amount of battlefield summons. I mean, we're talking primals here. We're already featuring one of the summon heaviest factions in the game. We're amping up the game we're amping this up by another notch. It's really amazing. And yeah, if you find a good moment for retaliating growths, go crazy. I rarely do. Tome of Summoning is the other tier 2 I picked up, as we have a lot of summoned units, so Arcane Restoration is always a nifty little thing. The Astral Keeper is really cool, as he is a supporter, and therefore he can heal, he can constrict, and he can do a lot of other good things, namely blowing himself up and heal people or provide static charge on blockers. List goes on and on. Arcane Supercharge is pretty cool, as we have a lot of Magic Origin units down the pipeline that will benefit from this massively. Alone, your tier 3 ice elementals are really prime candidates for this one. And Arcane Bond gives you an edge on enemy Magic Origin units. I really like that one, as we already have quite the domination gameplay on our side with the Eldritch theme to begin with. Forget about the Astral Serpent, though. I don't think it fits into this build at all. The Wisp Familiar, on the other hand, is another battle mage that you can't get right from the get-go. Sunders resistances, and yeah, you know, constricting Wisp Familiars. Stupid, but it works. Summoning Well gives you extra mana and mana knowledge for conduits and research posts. We do build a lot of these over the course of the time, and therefore it's pretty powerful. So, Tome of Glades is the other tier 2 to pick up. You can choose for yourself which order summoning or Glades first. Glades just provides too much goodness for the build that I am unable to skip it. Glade Runners upgrade your tier 1 cultural archers with something actually decent, debuffing the enemy and hitting quite hard. Entwined Protectors come to replace your cultural tier 1 shields with something more decent, with an AoE heal and extra heal via Aspect of the Root, which boosts up your old and high tier, old low tier and high tier units alike, with a nice self-healing ability that can't just be spammed at the beginning of the battle. So means if people are dinged up a little bit at the beginning of the battle, they can just fix that up by themselves, and by the time they need the next heal, it's most likely off the cooldown again. It's an amazing little enchantment. Leaf Skin, useful, but not really. We are not really using it up to the max. Same with Forest Warden. We are creating icy areas, not foresty areas. So Sacred Meadow comes in interesting insofar as it provides stability for conduits, and we, like I said, we have a lot of these. Tier 3, pick up the Cold Dark, and not the Corruption first, as Cold Dark provides just more of the things you want to have early on. The Snow Spirits finally make the Tier 3 elementals available from the get-go. Since they die a lot, I really prefer to summon the big ones right away. I have a hard time fostering the little ones into their next level. From all the elementals, I have the hardest time with the Ice elementals. Let me know what you think, but for me it's like that. Frostling Transformation. Innate frost resistance, immunity against freezing, and morale on cold terrain. There's so much goodness in that. And your armies even get to move a little bit faster on your home turf. I love this. This is effective, just a little bit costly on the research side and on the casting side. Marching Winter is also one of the superstars in this build, as it allows us to expand our territory into ice. What do I need to say more? We synergize with this mechanic on so many ends. You have so many productive cities with this build, actually, due to the many little things there. Veil of Darkness is pretty much useless in PvE environments as far as I know, and Flash Freeze, pretty nifty, as we have yet another status resistance stripper, and altering the terrain to our advantage. It's basically the buffed up version of the Blizzard, so really nice stuff. We also gained the ability to build Frost Spires, which Yeah, that's where knowledge production. We are surrounded by snow and ice eventually, so the knowledge production of these babies will be enormous. And blinding magic on your heroes is a nifty little thing as it counters off retaliations or debuffs archers. So I really like that one for what it does as well. And last but not least, of course, we need to talk about the Tome of Corruption and what it does for your build specifically. Gloomstrider is what I personally find extremely desirable for this build. The Umbral Demon transformation gives us even more staying power, sort of an immunity against negative status effects. If they don't layer several types of negative status effects, it just bounces off of your troops. It's amazing. And yeah, some resistance debuffs, it sucks a wee bit, but it really, you get so much back as you are floating and fast afterwards. You lose your mounts, but, well, a leg equipment slot hurts a bit on the heroes, though, gotta admit. The Umbral Mistresses come as your late game tier 4 units for more crowd control, but I gotta say, this build uses them, but it does not need them, as we are really more on the overrun people side, and these ladies can just. I like them for the priority target access that they have. Like, let's say a tier 4 to a 5 unit teleports into your backline and needs to be dealt with. Umbral Mistresses are good at that job, but apart from that, your army really works well without them. Corrupted Boon is what I personally love about that one, as we can counteract enemy buff strategies quite nicely with that. So I like this because we are a build that revolves around staying in battle for a while. Enemies that rely on buff heavy strategies can counter you sort of due to that. This counteracts that. Just smack that on the enemy's highest tier balled up troops and watch them wither down below their own buffs. Amazing. Umbral Incursion spawns infestations and hurts enemies, and the Insidious Whispers Throne. Yeah, well, you get to cast more things in battle with that for each city. It's lovely. Since we are so summon heavy, this faction takes so much out of the Insidious Whispers Throne. It's amazing. I really was surprised about that. And Treacherous Reflection, yeah, use it if you want to, but I often even skip researching it, as it is for me personally way too situative. But pick up Boon Stealing on your heroes that have high enough battle magic, as it is amazing. Tier 4 wise, pick up Oblivion, as it has a massive synergy, and from this point on, well, I vouch for Reaper into Eternal Lord for this build. Why? Reaper brings enough soul economy with these soul siphons that you really can work with it and harvest population to get all the stuff out that you need. And Eternal Lord has amazing enchantments for your battle mages and supporters, which really round up your game plan. Try it out; it's fun. So what's up for the strategy? Let's talk our roster. So the Primal Darter is there to be replaced, but he will be replaced quite late in the game. So does the Protector. Both of them will be replaced by tier 3 units, but you will end up racking up a couple of Protectors and Primal Darters more than you'd like. You can counteract that if you have early access to the Lesser Snow Spirit summon by summoning more Lesser Snow Spirits and ignoring the Protectors a wee bit, or the Primal Darters. Either way, they are reliable, solid units, but they are there to be replaced. The Protectors' prime takeaway is that they can convert the Fury stacks that they have into healing, which I rarely use as we have plenty of healing otherwise, and the Primal Daughters are short-ranged, but they have a disengaging attack, and like all the Glacial Mammal or Primal units, once they have their 5 stacks together, they all hit very hard, even being a tier 1 unit, so don't worry too much about that. My tip there is replace them for your main army stack and take the old tier 1 units to guard your borders or pillage the enemy or do whatever you want, where they ultimately get lost by attrition, because there is no room in the mid and end game for these little guys. I'm sorry for you. Tier 2 is a completely different territory. The Animists are the main backbone of your army. They have a very strong frost blasting attack that constricts, and when their Rising Fury is up, can really hurt a lot. They have a nice healing that also gives 3 stacks of Rising Fury, enabling people quicker to hit like a truck, and they can summon a Mammoth when their Primal Fury stacks are up. This is only used once per battle, and it should be used once per battle. It is amazing. This mammoth is just a tier 2 mythic unit, but it is your shock trooper that you need, and it has an AoE freeze stomp. What's not to like about that? So these guys, well, I run 4 to 5 in an 18 troop stack, and I'd highly recommend you to do so as well. The constrictors are the budget version of your tier 3 spears. Therefore, I usually only run 1 or 2 of these, as they are not too necessary for a build, but they are very available early on. Their constricting effect on their basic attacks is amazing, and the fact that they can pull somebody out of the enemy formation away from your people where they shouldn't stand makes them always useful. A constrictor is never a unit that I feel like, oh, I wish I hadn't had that guy on my troop. No, just don't overdo it, as we want more Ancestral Wardens later, because they're just stat-wise so superior. I skipped for this build the Primal Chargers entirely, but you don't need to. They are really cool. They have a charging attack, and they can cleave. The problem is they're melting like ice in the sunshine, and I kind of replaced their entire presence with the ice elementals in this build. But you can't skip the ice elementals and pick up these guys. It's up to you. You have versatility with this build due to that. White Witches are your prime major battle mages. You won't get much different battle mages in this build, so use them. They are really cool, as their damage profile is pretty decent. They ultimately get the Glacial Mammoth boon via the enchantment as well, so their damage will be periodically stupidly high with a chance of freezing, and they come with a nice utility slot. Don't over-rely on them as a damage tool. They're more of a utility side. Your damage comes from other units, so I'd vouch for 2, maximum 3 of these units on your 18 troop stack. Ancestral Wardens are what you want to spam as soon as your economy can handle it. These guys are just good. They are a little bit easy to kill, but they make up for a very, very hard-hitting basic attack. They can just jump into the enemy wherever they need to go to. It's really, really nice. I love that one. And due to the aspect of the root skill, they are surprisingly hard to kill, because they can just bolster up and stand in the way. Their main job in this build is to stand in the way and save your supporters, cut off enemies, or just jump into the enemy backline and stab enemy supporters, archers, and whatnot. The Ancestral Warden is extremely versatile due to his mobility, and can be used offensively and defensively, and therefore spam it. These guys are your main backbone melee-wise. Glade Runners, yo, that's your basic archer troop that you want to spam and replace your Primal Darters with ultimately, completely. As they have a decent attack, they can mock people to make them easier to hit and increase their damage and the melee damage as well. Yeah. There's not much to say about them, as they are just the basic frame to receive buffs, and we are not putting too many buffs on them, as we are more looking for this part of the gameplay. So, Entwine Protectors are another part of your front line that will give you a lot of staying power. With a combination of your Glacial Mammoth boon, they get that as well due to the enchantments. Let me fetch one here on my troop stack. Due to that, they can freeze enemies eventually quite decently. They are stupidly hard to kill with healing, sap, and aspect of the root on them working, and yeah. This is just rounding up your front line. These guys are ought to stand in the way where they need to stand in the way, and that pretty much sums up their job. Lesser Snow Spirits for filling up the ranks early on, and bigger Snow Spirits for that skirmishing power later on. I must say, these skirmishers are mostly interesting if the enemy runs a lot of burst-heavy units that can pop easily, like a bunch of pyromances. These are very, very vulnerable to skirmishers that suddenly stand in their face. But in general, I skipped the entire skirmisher part and in favor of archers, which are on their side much more burst vulnerable. So that's what I've been talking about in the intro about versatility. So your roster can be swapped by demand. More skirmishes if you need to pop the enemy faster, more shields if you need more staying power, more spears if you need more diversity. This is one thing that I really, really appreciate about this build. It feels so capable of dealing with many, many different situations. It comes up with the spell book that we have available. We can conjure an extra supporter if necessary. We can conjure a tentacle if we needed. We can conjure a shock trooper if we needed. Heck, we have 3 different tools that we can apply depending on the situation. We have a battlefield-wide heal on the magic origins, namely or summons. It's really mostly to fix up your summons and make them even more obnoxious. And Ancestral Harmony to give you a dirt cheap healing spell. I mean, freaking 5 mana, that's almost nothing. And we have Ice Coffin, and last but not least, also Arcane Supercharge. And I'm not even fully capable of all the things in this run yet. So, in a nutshell, you're really good at keeping the enemy just unable to do what they want to do and just heal up what needs to be healed up. As we run a lot of supporty power on the animists, and the self-support of the spears and the shields is brilliant. My heroes run obviously also on a lot of supporty skills. I try to get that Manifest Tentacle on anybody when I run Eldritch. This is basically a must-have for me. I try to get the Animal Summon skill on them eventually as well by, where is it? No, here, the Spiritual Healing one. Heroes can't learn that? I thought heroes could learn that. I'm very, very sorry about that. Did that got changed? I was so fond of the memory that I was able to summon these animals, primal animals as well. Anyways, I'm sidetracked. I'm very sorry about that. But you can learn Spiritual Healing, which allows your animists to pop their charge faster. And what can I say? You're really, 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 really good at keeping enemies unable to kill your guys. And when you top it off with the extra battle magic paths that you have, you also gain extra supporties, and it is really, really nice. You can do a lot of shenanigans with that, and I found it amusing how hard it was for any enemy to kill me, especially since by the mid game you will boast an army of tier 2 and tier 3 troops moving forward into a prime access into tier 4 units like the Umbral Witches, and if you run Oblivion you have the Living Fog. Eventually you have Reapers, which, yeah, dominate the game all the way. Utilize the ice gameplay as fast as you can. Build those special provinces as fast as you can. Frost Spires and Glacial Megaliths are really all super desirable for this build. Let me show you one of these. Basically, as soon as you have the spell available to terraform the lands, do that everywhere, as Frost Spire and the School of Cryomancy and the Glacial Megalith, all 3 synergize massively with ice and snow provinces, and the faster you can crank these out, the more stupid goes your economy. Meaning which, your early game economy ain't the best. This is really one of the major downsides of that build that I have to admit. It takes a while for your ice gameplay to rock, but as soon as it is rolling, the enemy is really, really on a loss, because you are terraforming the terrain to your advantage. All your racial transformations work towards that, so I like this build. I hope you do too. Leave me your opinion in the comment section. Leave me your wishes, what you want to see next. And of course, a thumbs up and a subscription would be very, very, oh god, my brain is so freaking, very appreciated. Sometimes words are just at a loss. Check out the description box. There's a lot of playlist stuff and links. I'm giving up. Thanks for watching, you everybody, and see you all in the next one. Bye bye.